Hey everyone, welcome back to the Blitz Sports Media Fantasy Channel. I'm yours truly, the Dean of Fantasy Football, and today we are taking a look at some prime candidates for a bounce back fantasy season. Now, if you haven't checked out my last video, I went ahead and tiered the projected week one starters for the quarterback position, and in one of those tiers were two quarterbacks I think that were ready for a bounce back season. So go ahead and check that out. But for today, we're checking out 5 skill position players who are ready for some fantasy redemption. So let's get into it. To start things off is the fantasy god of recent years, and that is Christian McCaffrey of the 49ers. Now, McCaffrey dealt with an Achilles injury last year, only played 4 games, so that made him finish as running back 69, so far down, but we know what McCaffrey is capable of. We've seen RB1, number one fantasy player overalls in recent years. So we know what Christian McCaffrey gives to your fantasy labs on week in and week out. For the Niners, they had a weird 2024 season, very disappointing to say the least, but they brought back some vital parts of their offense, including Brock Purdy and George Kittle. McCaffrey now fully healthy, as we hope so, comes back to an offense without Deebo Samuel and is still the focal point on this offense. So for McCaffrey right now, his current ADP is about early second round. I think that's going to change as we get closer to the NFL season. But right now, that is just so juicy to take. I would love for him to be my second pick on my fantasy team because we know what he is capable of week in and week out. So Christian McCaffrey, you're looking ahead at 2025. He's a guy that stays healthy, is a guaranteed top tier performer for fantasy purposes. Let's stick to the running back position as we head to Seattle and we bring up Kenneth Walker. If we want to bring up injuries, you talk about Kenneth Walker. He finished as a running back 27 in 11 games last year. But you look at his stats and the points that he averaged per game was 16 and a half fantasy points. I mean, that is production when on the field. And that's just what we have to hope for Kenneth Walker to stay healthy, to stay playing, because when he does, he is a huge asset to anyone's fantasy lineup. Now, I would never tell you to shy away from somebody from injuries because the NFL and football in general is such a physical sport that it's bound to happen to somebody and you can never predict who it may be. So I'm going to tell you right now that I think Kenneth Walker is prime for a bounce back fantasy season this upcoming year with the Seahawks. Listen, I like the Seahawks a lot. They did a lot of great things. They signed Sam Darnold. They brought in some veteran receivers. This is going to be an offense that's going to put up some points, and I think Kenneth Walker is going to be the catalyst of that in the backfield. Let's go to some pass catchers now. My first focus is going to be on a sophomore, and it's the sophomore that didn't get a lot of hype at the end of the season. It's Marvin Harrison Jr., overshadowed by the performances of Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas with their respective teams. It seemed that Marvin Harrison and Kyler Murray, that pairing, didn't quite sync up as consistent as we have liked. Now, listen, Marvin Harrison had some great performances throughout the season. He finished as wide receiver 1, I believe, 1 or 2 times last year, but he just couldn't do it on a consistent basis. There was a lot of hype going into last year. Even for myself, I selected him in the second round of one of my drafts just because I was so infatuated with the hype. I think now with his current ADP of 44, he's brought down back to life. It's more of a, hey, he can still do it because listen, he was second in air yards per catch. Those are big points for fantasy when completed, right? So there is a lot of optimism looking ahead for Marvin Harrison Jr. in fantasy purposes. So don't give up on him just yet because he is still your wide receiver 1 paired with a great quarterback in Kyler Murray. And this offense for the Cardinals can put up some points week in and week out, but we just need that consistency. And I think Marvin Harrison, a second year with his quarterback, is primed for some fantasy production this season. Next, we're going to go with kind of a different outlook on this bounce back type of structure for this video. I'm going to bring up that I think Nico Collins is primed for a bounce back season. I know it's kind of crazy. He's a first round pick, right? That's his current ADP. He's a first round selection, and as he should be. But last year, he finished as wide receiver 23, but still averaged 17.6 fantasy points per game. And this is in PPR, of course, guys. You look around where he finished, nobody has that kind of numbers, right? He missed a chunk of the year due to injury, and it happens, like I said earlier. But Nico Collins is aligned with CJ Stroud, who they invested in a lot because of that offensive line, right? Restructuring that. Wide receiver 1. This Texans offense is explosive, and he's the spotlight on it. I have high hopes for Nico Collins. I think that he's never going to touch that wide receiver 23 finish that he did last year ever again. He's going to be top tier week in, week out, year to year. Nico Collins is going to get back on his grind, and he's going to be a top wide receiver in fantasy this upcoming season. So let's finish this one off with a tight end that I'm really optimistic about, and that's going to be Evan Ingram. Ever since Evan Ingram left the New York Giants and made his way to Jacksonville, he's been a top tier tight end in fantasy football. In 2022, he finished as tight end 5, and in 2023, he finished as tight end 2. Now, last year, only played 9 games, finished as tight end 33. His current ADP has him coming off the board as like the 7th tight end, which I think is way too late. I have high hopes for him. Now he comes over to Denver. He's going to be a part of this Broncos offense led by Sean Payton calling the plays, and with quarterback Bo Nix, who exploded onto the scene his rookie year. This is just another weapon for Bo Nix, another weapon for Sean Payton. I love Evan Ingram with the Broncos. I think it's a perfect pairing for the two, and I think he can really get back to that top 5 finish that we've been accustomed to in recent years for Evan Ingram. So Evan Ingram is a guy that I think you should target later in rounds. Probably grab him before anyone else could. He is ready for some redemption, and he's going to do a lot of great things in Denver with that offense. And those are my bounce back candidates. Who are yours? Leave a comment on who you think is going to have a great 2025 season. And do not forget to like, follow, subscribe, everything you can do on all Blitz Sports Media channel. I'm the Dean of Fantasy Football, and I'll catch you next time.